radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Bam! Fade to Black. Bespoke radio for the masses. Yeah, man. How you doing? How you doing? Today's Wednesday, September 25th, 2019. 269 days into the new year, just 96 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in the middle of beautiful downtown Burbank, California. And I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world. All across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. This is Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I am your host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? How you doing? How you doing? Hey. Tonight, Richard Bleepin' Dolan. Richard Dolan right here on Fade to Black tonight. Get ready for that. Love it when Richard is here. Love it when Richard is here. Got a lot to talk about with Richard. So much has blown up in the last couple of months that I think even I know you're here with me every single night. You see how I've been dealing with it barely. It's crazy, right? It's nuts. UFOs are everywhere today, everywhere. And Richard, who is so sensible and calm, cool, and collected, he's losing his mind too, right along with the rest of us. But how's he dealing with it? What does he think? What are his opinions? Tonight, we're going to do all of that. It's Richard Bleepin' Dolan. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. That's what you want to do, at JChurchRadio. Yeah. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Richard Dolan. Tomorrow night, Fader night, open lines all night long. You know what's funny? I'm going to ask Richard when I bring him on. I can't hear him right now. He's on hold. But I can watch the meters on his channel bounce, which means he thinks he's talking to me. See, he's talking right now. He's talking smack right now. And Richard, nobody can hear you. Richard Dolan is one of the world's leading researchers and writers on the subject of UFOs and believes that they constitute the greatest mystery of our time. Completed his graduate work at the University of Rochester, where he studied U.S. Cold War strategy, European history, and international diplomacy. Richard also studied at Alfred University and Oxford University. He's the author of UFOs and National Security State. He co-authored those with Bryce Abel, 80 After Disclosure, and his latest book is UFOs in the 21st Century Mind. I got all of that wrong, but it doesn't matter. He also hosts his weekly radio show, The Richard Dolan Show. He's been a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM, of course, right here at Fade to Black. Ancient Aliens, Hangar 1 UFO Files, Close Encounters. I just want to get through this bio so I can get to Richard Bleepin' Dolan, because tonight we are going to discuss the latest news about the U.S. Navy statements regarding UAPs and all of the latest developments in the UFO world. And Richard's been at the center of it, especially the last couple of months. I'd like to welcome back to Fade to Black. I got it all out. Richard Dolan. Richard, how are you, my friend? I almost said, man. So,
am I actually on the air now?
Yeah, now you're on the air.
That's good. So you were correct. I was laughing.
That was, you know what? Rita instructed me before the show tonight. She said, no Jimmy and Richard Brofest. Just be professionals. So let's just be professionals. Oh, man.
That ruins my whole strategy.
I know. I'm going to get so much grief tonight after the show for saying that. But Rita's right, because one of the things, before I ask you about the last thing that you listened to today, piece of music, the truth is very simple. When you start out broadcasting, and for me, it's been a long time ago, and you and I had our first interview together, and we were feeling each other out, a couple of jabs and, figuring, your opponent out, right? But at the next interview and the next and the next and the next, you get past all of those questions you get asked all the time. And you and I are now at another level where we have conversations now about real issues from two people that trust each other. And that the audience will always get that from you and I. We were talking about that earlier today, actually. Yeah. Yeah,
that's absolutely true. And honestly, I tend to complain to you on the air more than I complain to anybody else.
I think a good thing.
You get more complaints on the air than I give to Tracy, and I give her a lot. But I give more to you, and I have to ask myself why that's so, Jimmy. But you get more of the real me than most people who interview me do.
Well, and vice versa. So and the audience knows that, man. They really do.
I mean, look, I just have to say I do enjoy these interviews with you, and I didn't want it to sound like a bro thing. I just feel like we tend to get along. You ask me questions that are generally very interesting to me. And you have this way. You get things out of me that a lot of interviewers do not. So I have to give you credit.
Okay. Well, we're going to do it tonight. We're going to do it tonight. Let's get the basics out of the way. What was the last song you listened to today, my friend?
This was an easy one. It was "Can't Touch This" by MC Hammer.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah. Well, we were just watching the documentary on Elizabeth Holmes.
Oh,
you know who
yeah.
this is?
Yeah.
She had the company Theranos. And there was a very, very fine documentary about her fraud against the entire world, basically, about her product. And it was called The Inventor Out for Blood in Silicon Valley. And we just watched it. It ended with the MC Hammer clip.
Now, I haven't seen it yet, but and I've heard it's just like jaw-dropping, right? Where'd the money go? I mean, we're talking astronomical amounts of dollars here.
Billions of dollars, hundreds of millions of investment dollars. I don't know how she was evaluated at $4.5 billion at one point. Her net worth back in 2015. She's at less than zero now.
Right.
So I don't know where it all went. I do know that at least I learned that she lost all of that money having to repay back defrauded investors. Many people in the state of Arizona. She had a deal with Walgreens in Arizona to do this blood test system that was in no way ever going to work. And it's astonishing that someone could lie in such a bald-faced way to convince all the regulators, convince all the investors that she had this machine that was able to do all the things that she said it could do when the science was not even remotely there. And in fact, according to the people, just like physically impossible. You can't defeat the laws of thermodynamics. She had this small little box that was supposedly able to do a blood test for you, a comprehensive type of blood test based on like a drop of blood. And the answer is no, she did not. And she just lied and lied and lied about it. It's an incredible story.
The same thing when you wonder about this, how can people pull that off, right? How can people pull off a fraud and technically hoax too, And
something we deal with in our field.
That's where I'm going. Well, not really, sort of. And that is, there was another. It's a fantastic book. It's called BRE-X, BRE-X. And I got the book. Somebody gave me the book. I ended up getting a second one. Started to read about it. And BRE-X was a Canadian company, a minerals company, where I'm not going to get into the details, but so they head out to Basang, out in the South Pacific, and they find gold deposits. And through drilling and the cores said that this was the largest gold deposit, gold vein at the surface of the earth, right there in the history of the known universe, right? The amount of gold that was there that was coming up with these core samples. Well, the stock price of BRE-X went from a penny stock to like $300 a share in like the year, it was like 1990. 91, 92, 93, 94. Okay. BRE-X went from the Canadian Stock Exchange to NASDAQ to the New York Stock Exchange. And it was all a fraud. This dude was taking gold flakes, aged gold flakes, and dropping them in these core samples. Right, like pepper, right? You're
telling me a nice Canadian did that?
A nice Canadian, and it's one of the biggest. And now we are talking about when this thing imploded.
That's amazing,
right? When it imploded,
I never heard this. This is all new to me.
Yeah, BRE-X, it's incredible. Now this is the thing. All of Canada was in stocks. Retirement funds, right? Everybody loaded up, and this stock went $2, $4, $8. It's up to $300. Everybody's rich. Everybody's happy. It was just incredible. New York Stock Exchange ringing the bell, the whole shot, and then they got busted. And it's incredible, and it lasted for I'm going to say it was about a 5-6 year run. Mm-hmm. And then the guy that did the gold sprinkling, right?
Right. Yes.
Fell out of a helicopter accidentally. Yeah.
Fell? Wait, seriously? He accidentally fell out of a helicopter.
Yeah, you saw.
His career was tanking, and investors wanted their money back.
You saw Scarface. You know the drill.
Who falls accidentally out of a helicopter? Seriously.
A guy that does a $5 billion fraud on the country of Canada.
Wow.
Yeah. Never found his body.
That's part of our world.
Yeah. Okay, I'm going to lay this out to you, Richard. We got a lot to talk about tonight. I'm going to lay this out.
Please, I'm waiting for you to lay it out.
It
must be laid out.
There are more stars in our universe than grains of sand on all of the beaches and all of the deserts on planet Earth. Today, each one of those stars is thought to have a planet. What goes through your mind?
I haven't been to the beach in ages. That's what I'm thinking. That's the first thought. All this sand. I haven't gone to the beach almost all summer. Second thought, that's a lot of planets. That's a lot of people. Have I lost you, Jimmy? Are you
No,
gone?
I'm listening to you, and that's the reaction you should have. Because you can't even wrap your mind around.
You're not the first person to say this to me, that the amount of stars is just beyond the amount of grains of sand. So that is a lot. That is an unbelievable amount. In fact, it's beyond fathoming.
It's beyond that.
I can't imagine it.
In 1995, the first exoplanet was discovered. 1995, man, 24 years ago. And before 1995, we postulated, we thought that there may be other planets outside of our solar system. 1995, right? And the first exoplanet discovered in 1995. today, we know that there's 10,000, cataloged exoplanets, and we're finding, a new exoplanet every single day. 1 out of 5 stars, that is each grain of sand on this planet, right? Each grain of sand on all the beaches and all the deserts, 1 out of 5 grains of sand has an Earth-like planet.
Think about this.
That's crazy, isn't it? That's just unbelievable where we are today.
A little over 200 years ago, geologists were making the argument really for the first time of this principle of, I wish I could remember this, like universalism. In other words, the principles of the Earth and of the formation of land masses today it's not that there was some cataclysmic change. It was they postulated that the Earth has been in this steady state for a very, very, very long time. And it turned out to be correct. Based on their thoughts, they revised the age of the Earth from several thousands of years of age to what was then thought to be an amazing amount of millions of years of age. And now, of course, it's billions. But the idea is that the principles that we see around us today, it might just be very logical to extrapolate out and assume that these are logical, universal principles wherever you go. And I think maybe what we're starting to see slowly is a revolution in exoplanetary and the ideas of life, exo-life, I guess you could say. Mm-hmm. So in other words, whereas scientists have always said that life on Earth is this unique thing, and it only happened because of all of these, really rare, unique occurrences. Perhaps that's really, really incredibly wrong. Perhaps we should expect the kinds of, the incredible amount of diversity of life that we have on this planet. Maybe it's actually not that outrageous to expect that there's a lot of it elsewhere. And indeed, other biological creatures that can live on oxygen, nitrogen, the way that we do. Mm-hmm. And that, biological creatures, and maybe even something like mammals and things like reptiles. After all, the elements that comprise the universe seem to be universal, hydrogen and everything that follows it. And so you've got the basic building blocks. So why shouldn't life be organic, at least in some way that would be comprehensible to us? Why shouldn't creatures be born, grow, reproduce, and die? And if that's the case, if that's actually extremely universal, and if all of those grains of sand, or at least 1 out of 5 of them, or a certain percentage have life, then, we are one.
Yeah, do you think we're alone?
Little neighborhood.
Yeah, we're just one. And this is the other fascinating part when we start to look at it with these glasses on, is that we are truly, our little grain of sand, our sun, our little grain of sand in the vastness of everything. Yeah, I get that. We're such a tiny, small part of everything that there is. But on this little, beautiful blue planet of ours, we have now the ability to discuss it. That we have grown up, and you and I are discussing the size of the universe and what we now know.
We're life that has become conscious.
That's an incredible thought.
We've achieved that level of understanding that we're able to turn that thought process toward the universe. And that is the incredible thing indeed.
It is. It is. Truly is.
Aside from the fact that I do actually now want to go back to the beach since you brought this whole thing up, but you really made me think. I was at a beach about a year ago, and I just remembered thinking, I was looking at the setting sun. It was kind of an idyllic setting. And I did have that moment. Like you always, once in a while, have this moment of looking out at the sky and looking beyond the sky, as it were, and knowing that in the direction that you look, there is someone out there. and wondering what they are like and how many of them are there and so forth. And I'm glad that every now and then I can still get that feeling of inspiration when I look up and look out there.
And hopefully and hopefully it never goes away. I don't think it will for me or for anybody else. You need to stay a kid. You don't need to grow up. You need to keep asking questions. Say why. Say why as much as you can.
Absolutely.
That's it. And I wanted to ask you this. Let's go out of bounds a little bit. Today, not necessarily in the UFO subject, but the answer could be. This is a square is a rectangle, rectangle isn't a square type of question. What concerns you most about this planet today? What honestly, where do you spend most of your mind time with concern?
Well, if I'm worried, if I want to have long-term worries, it's maybe not so much about the planet, but it is about the human species. And I guess I would say that I look at us as a big spike on the history of the planet. The planet's been around for 4.5 billion years, and Earth will find a way to survive humanity. Like, it really will. Even if we destroy the world and toxify it for the next period of time, it probably won't be more than 1 million years, and the Earth's going to be around for many billion of years after that. Earth will recover, but the fate of humanity, we're not a stable species. I mean, I think anyone can understand that. Something very odd has occurred to humanity. I mean, think of it this way. For about 250,000 years, as far as we can tell, we existed as Homo sapiens sapiens, as human beings, just as we are, mostly in Africa, and then eventually we moved out. And only in the last, let's say 10,000 years, have we really completely transformed who we are. So we were very stable as a species for nearly all of the time that we have been a species. And in the last 10,000 years, we discovered a number of things, primarily sedentary agriculture, settled societies. We transformed our diet. We transformed the way that we exist as a society. And we actually transformed ourselves physiologically, as we now know. And that process has led, I'd have to say, inextricably to eventually, as we discovered science, discovered how to harness nature and how to harness the elements. And we're transforming ourselves more and more rapidly, and at the same time giving ourselves more and more power, vastly more power. Even when we settled into small communities a few thousand years ago, that gave us a lot of power, much more than other animals have had. And now it's just, we're developing the power of what we saw in the ancient gods. We're about to modify our genetic code. We're about to create artificial intelligence. We're about to create all of these completely new sciences. So I think what's happening is that we're about to say goodbye to humanity as we have understood it. And we are about to walk into something very, very new and different. And I'm not sure that I like that, to be honest with you. There are people who are gung-ho, pedal-to-the-metal futurists. I am not one of them. I have a lot of reservations about that degree of rapid change. And I just think this does not bode well. I don't like the fact that we're looking at transforming our fundamental humanity so rapidly in such a short period of time. That's kind of a redundancy. Change our humanity in such a short period of time. So rapidly in such a short period of time. You know what I mean? So I do. I'm concerned about that. And I just think bad things are going to come out of that.
I look back, and you're absolutely right. And if you look back to, I think the key year was 1995. And what happened between 1995 and the year 2000 was too much, too quick, too fast, and we didn't know how to deal with it. And if you think about what happened between 1995 and 2000, not only
the web, we really got the web during that period of time.
The web is front and center, and we didn't even know what the web was when it kicked off. And today it's everything, right? It's everything. It's electricity, it's water, it's food delivery, it's GPS, it's your watch, it's your house, it's
social media, and it's a surveillance system.
It's everything. It's everything. So there's that part. But you know what else happened between 1995 and 2000? Cell phones happened. Didn't have that before. Flat screen TVs. By the time 2000 rolled around, tube television. The technology that overtook us between 1995 and 2000. I made up a list one time. It was like 30 different significant technical leaps. And it was too much, too fast, and we just didn't. By the time 2000 rolled around, we were a different species. We had completely transformed.
Yeah, I agree with you. And it's only gone even faster now in the last 20 years. 2000 was almost 20 years ago. It's incredible. What I think we've seen now is that the society and subsequent generations have reacted to that transformation. So you've had the new generation of people have grown up in that world. You and I did not grow up in that world, but our kids, anyone under 20, they have grown up in this new world, and it creates a different psychology in certain ways.
It's a DNA change. I'm telling you right now, there's definitely some things that were modified.
There's a new science. They call it epigenetics, and it's a genuine, valid science, and it talks about how our genetics are. And this is like Lamarck's revenge. If anyone studied biological history, history of biology, Gustav Lamarck, back in the 19th century, said, evolution happens because I think the example was the giraffe is trying to reach those tall leaves and got a long neck. And later biologists would laugh at that. They say that's silly. It's only on genetic mutation, and the mutations that work are the ones that survive. But what we now are understanding is that no, actually Lamarck had a fundamentally correct point, and that we are deeply affected genetically by the environment around us. And so when you look at it that way, you can see we've transformed our environment so dramatically, even by human standards, which has always been a lot, just in the last 20 years. So it's doing things, and we are changing ourselves.
Have you seen kids? Have you seen kids, a 15-year-old? Have you seen a 15-year-old text on a smartphone? You tell me that's not genetic modification.
Yeah, they're like magical wizards.
Right? It sounds like an Uzi on steroids.
There's no quicker way to make me feel old than to watch a teenager text.
It's so
Actually,
true.
no, look, I'm very happy with I'm just going to say this. I know we're going to jump into UFOs, but
yes.
One of the very important things that I do in my life, and Tracy and I we're usually really good about this, is we unplug after a certain time of day. And it frustrates some of our friends. But for me, I have to tell you, I firmly believe that being plugged in, it's not simply unhealthy for us psychologically, but I actually think it makes us, just brace yourself, I think it makes us less intelligent. I think the way our minds work, what is intelligence? But, well, partly the ability to focus, concentrate on something for an extended period of time without dealing with interruptions. So you push out other things and you problem solve and you create and you do whatever, but you have to do that in some kind of isolation. And the problem with the connectivity of the world that we have today, one of the problems is that we're constantly being bombarded. Ding, ding, notification here and email there and message here. And so you really don't, it's very hard for a lot of people to get into that zone of creation or that zone of problem solving. And it's going to get worse, not better. When people want their little cognitive implants to connect themselves to the cloud or the web, they'll have it's like putting your cell phone in your brain. But what I like to do is I need to keep it out. And this is how we are as human beings. We're not designed to be interrupted by Facebook notifications every 2 minutes. We're designed actually to be able, we have to be able to unplug, I think, for our psychological health and for our intellectual capabilities. So for me, when I see these, not just young people, but anyone, like people just glued to their phone, looking at their phone all the time, it's addictive and it's very, it's seductive. But man, it is very much like a drug, which is also seductive and addictive and also can damage you in the long term. So for me, the big challenge of my life is to try to find a way to use that technology, because I need to use it as well. I mean, I'm a public person and I have a message that I put out to the world, and I need to use that technology. But my God, I have to continue to find a way not to be owned by that technology. It's not healthy, and I don't want it. I don't want to live a life like that.
No, and we need to take a break right here, but the brain needs exercise. And getting your answers from Google instead of thinking about it,
right.
Now your brain isn't working anymore.
Nope,
and
absolutely.
that it needs its exercise. It needs its treadmill. It does. It needs its treadmill. Oh, I got a treadmill, by the way. That thing is Satan. That thing is Satan. Rita's doing good. Me, not so much. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Richard Dolan. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, you know what it is. It's UFOs. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. You can follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can follow Richard at Rich Dolan right there on Twitter. The links are up. And open conversation tonight. And you know what? It's been a couple of months, Richard, since you and I last spoke. I don't know if it was on Coast to Coast or here on Fade to Black. But nonetheless, lots of craziness that has gone down over the last couple of months. And I want to go down through the headlines and get where your head is at on this and your research. And I want to start here. John Greenwald of the Black Vault back on September 10th and 11th released a couple of articles. I took them over to Coast, and that's Saturday, which was the 14th, and broke the news there. On Monday, all hell broke loose with the mainstream media. And this, of course, was the Navy acknowledging UAPs were in those 3 videos. Picked up worldwide, and it was pretty amazing to watch. Now, what was your first thoughts as you start to see this story break?
I was very pleased and really proud that John Greenwald made that scoop. I've known John a long time, and I've always had a very high level of respect for him. And I just think this was a great victory by him for those of us who care about the truth. And John, to his credit, he was very open about his own reaction to what the Navy acknowledged. And he said something like, I was expecting them to use language like calling these drones or balloons and whatnot. And he said they didn't do that. They went on the record calling this phenomena and saying that they were unknown or unidentified. And he stated that he was genuinely surprised and excited by it. And I was just glad to see that reaction as well by John. For me, getting that piece of confirmation by the Navy, it's really a situation of the other shoe dropping. I mean, I think most folks have been working under the assumption since December 2017, all right, that those videos are genuine U.S. Navy videos. Now, the New York Times, was the one that came out with that statement initially. And the New York Times is not always a truthful publication, but they are always the voice of the establishment. And when they come out with something, you do want to pay attention and find out what they're, what's going on there. Over the last 2 years since then, it seems to me that the smart money has always been on the fact that these videos are legit. But it is definitely an important moment when the U.S. Navy acknowledges them and acknowledges them as unidentified phenomena, that they just don't know what they are. So really, you're getting this confirmation in a roundabout way of really what even happened in November 2004 with the U.S. Navy's Tic Tac UFO encounter. I mean, for the record, the Navy hasn't explicitly talked about that encounter the way, I mean, people like David Fravor have, and Kevin Day have, Navy personnel have talked about it, but the Navy as an institution hasn't. But they've gone at least a significant step toward that by acknowledging these videos as legit and as unknown or unidentified. So I think that's very important.
What's the impact overall? Is it smoking gun status? Is it elevated to that level to have the Navy say something like UAP?
Well, they've been very explicit about saying we're not saying it's aliens. So they've bent over backwards to say we're not talking about aliens necessarily. Of course, they're not offering any ideas as to what these things could be either. So there's that. I think the reaction time for all of these is it's never going to be immediate. It's not going to be immediate. When I co-authored AD After Disclosure about a decade ago, actually, and when Bryce Zabel and I were writing that book, we were envisioning how a disclosure might happen. And I think that we, like most people, had this idea that a disclosure could happen with like a significant announcement, a significant truth bomb being dropped, as it were, and changing things overnight. And I think that's actually what's not happening. Now, there are other things we wrote about that I think actually were really on point, but this is a significant thing that we're seeing, which is that the public does not uniformly react immediately to all of this news, but it is having shockwaves. So we are seeing an effect. When you look at everything preceding this Navy announcement, right, you can see how the corporate established, the power media, as it were, everyone from CNN to MSNBC to Fox and the New York Times and the rest, their take on UFOs has dramatically changed over the last 2 years. So they don't instinctively, snarkily laugh them off. Usually, there's still some bad journalism out there for sure, but they're definitely handling the subject differently. But it's not overnight. It's not overnight. And I think with this Navy announcement, this Navy recognition, I think it will, it'll be another movement, but I don't think we should yet expect this overnight, everyone being on the same page with it. Some opinions on this are going to be very, very entrenched for a long time. And I think for some people, they'll never change their opinions no matter how much evidence might be presented to them. So it'll be by degrees. And until there is an actual official announcement from a major political institution, and at this point, I don't even know what political person or institution would have enough status to be able to convince the world of this. Certainly not President Trump. Could you imagine if he were to give a disclosure statement, half the country automatically would not believe him? And, any other world leader, I don't know if they would easily be believed. We're at that kind of a point. So I think this is going to take a longer time than many of us have realized. But the other side of it is this. Each new revelation is prompting more questions and more pressure. That you can definitely see that there's a traction happening here, and there's a kind of a feedback that's now happening, so that all of these revelations are prompting more and more people to pry a little bit more information out. And the last thing I guess I would just say is a great deal of this, really the lion's share of this, has to go down to TTSA. And I mean, I know they have their detractors and they've got their supporters, but a lot of detractors. But I can't even imagine like that we would be anywhere near where we are without the efforts of that group, that organization. And I just think that has to be acknowledged.
Yeah, well, there's that side of it. The other part of it, and I want to move on. We have so much to discuss tonight. But it's really funny. Irony is a strange word, right? And you need to be careful of avoiding irony when you can, because in this case, Greenwald looking into TTSA, as we all know, he's been doing that for a couple of years.
Very strong critic of them.
Accidentally backed over this, right? He's backing up his car and he runs over the U.S. Navy with this UAP story. And that's about as ironic of a situation as you can have. In that, it wasn't TTSA that got the Navy to disclose this. It wasn't Elizondo that got the Navy to do this. It was John Greenwald looking into TTSA that got the Navy to do this. And that's the part about this whole thing that I think we need to...
There's another irony. There's actually an irony that goes the other way.
Sure, go ahead.
This is John wanting... John has been extremely critical of TTSA and really, inferring that they're a disinformation outfit and things of this particular sort. And but in fact, by getting this acknowledgement from the Navy, I think one could at least argue provides a level of support.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. I'm agreeing with you. Yes, That's exactly what I'm saying.
I wonder how he feels about it. But as I say, to his credit, like John's a good guy and he's a great researcher and he's got integrity. And I haven't really agreed with everything that he said about them up till now, but that doesn't stop me from respecting him. And I just thought very well of him when I read his statement.
Yeah, there you go. All right, now, Storm Area 51. Storm Area 51.
Did you practice your Naruto-style running, Jimmy?
I did. You didn't see me on the video? No, I didn't go.
You did some. Good for you.
on my treadmill. Going back, I want to get a bunch of your thoughts on this. Let's go back 2 weeks ago, just 2 weeks ago, simple 2 weeks ago. Did you ever contemplate going to maybe check it out, or did you think it was just a bad idea from the word go?
I never contemplated to go, no. I had other things to do. I was in Toronto with Tracy this weekend. We did a event there, a significant event that MUFON Canada has organized for a number of years, and we just did that. That's the Alien Cosmic Expo, ACE, which, it's close to where we live, and the exact same weekend. So there was really never a chance that I was going to do the Area 51 event. No. How about you? A little closer. It might have been possible for you, for all I know.
There was no way I would ever even contemplate going to it, putting on an event.
How many people actually went there?
Okay, see, that's where I was going next. This is the interesting part, right? We had 3 million people, confirm on Facebook, whatever, it's 3 million people. What percentage of that would actually show up? Well, it turns out in Rachel, Nevada, home of the Alien, they had alien stock, and they had between 2,000 and 3,000 people show up for a 3-day music event. Fantastic. Cool.
So I just got a text from Jeremy Corbell earlier today, and he said close to 3,000 people. I was very surprised. So I just wanted to make sure. I haven't talked to Jeremy.
No, his event. His event got canceled. He canceled it.
I'll have to read his message a little more carefully.
No, 3,000 people showed up in Rachel. His event, the first night on Friday, had a couple of dozen people, and then they canceled it altogether the next day. So he shut his thing down.
But Rachel had 3,000 people. That's a lot
right.
of folks for Rachel, Nevada.
That's a lot of folks for Rachel, Nevada.
Is this a music event?
It was 3 days of music. Yep. And now do
people really go for 3 days of music in Rachel, Nevada?
They
is
did.
that a thing? Is that a fun thing to do?
I might go next year. Next year.
Old. That's it.
Next year, you, Tracy, Rita, and I, let's go to Rachel.
Let me get back to you on that.
Yeah.
I'll give you.
Let's go somewhere else.
I'll give you.
Tracy.
We'll discuss this.
Tracy, they have really nice accommodations in Rachel. You won't be disappointed. They have a day spa there, Tracy. You'll love it.
Okay, I'll let her know.
See, the thing for me that I was most concerned about is that you're going to have that the possibility of having an influx of maybe thousands that are actually there to storm those gates, go across the desert, get to the back gate, storm the gates, and get into a lot of trouble. That's the part that I was really freaking out on. I didn't want to see anybody.
This is not America. No one in this country, very few people, I guess I should say, are capable of doing that. This isn't the pioneer days anymore.
Right.
This isn't the 1880s.
No,
where
it
people
is
actually
not.
were in shape and able to deal with the elements. Seriously.
I know.
Those days are gone.
A couple of kids, a couple of thousand kids with juice boxes, heading across the desert.
It's not going to. It's sad to say.
Yeah.
If this were a different era, you might wonder about it. Seriously. America today, not happening.
Now,
we all knew it was not going to happen. No one was going to storm anything.
Did the exposure that Area 51 got from the mass media and, 3 million people clicking on that, does that lift the awareness, though, and allow people to start asking questions about Area 51? Is that the positive side of this?
I think it's the sign that the UFO subject it's a significant subject. And you can look at it a couple of ways. You can look at it as, this subject, really because of the web, because of the last 25 years of our ability to communicate in this manner, it has lifted the UFO subject to a very high level of consciousness so that you can have 3 million people or so clicking an interest in going to Area 51. Yeah. And perhaps it has helped to raise some consciousness as a result as well. But what you can definitely see, is that the UFO subject, in terms of global media, is, this is good and bad, is basically just another brand. It's another brand. It's another product. In other words, it's a legitimate product that people around the world are interested in, like a whole bunch of other products, both physical and intellectual. The UFO subject is a serious, significant subject. That's why we see it everywhere in our popular culture. Seldom handled well by Hollywood, but it's all around us anyway. So I think that's a significant thing. If you remember back in 2008 when U.S. presidential candidate Dennis Kucinich had his candidacy ruined by the fact that it came out that he had witnessed a UFO with two other people, no less, back in the 1980s. Those two other people who also came out in 2008 and said, oh, yeah, we were there and we saw the same thing. Didn't matter. It destroyed his presidential run. And we go from that to 8 years later, Hillary Clinton being on the Jimmy Kimmel show talking about UFOs, getting coverage in the New York Times about UFOs and not getting destroyed by it, not at all. So within less than a decade in the United States, the UFO subject went through a kind of cultural transformation. That really, I think, has happened. So, well,
let me jump in. If you remember, the look on Dennis Kucinich's face at that moment, the way that the other candidates in that debate jumped on this, like a feeding frenzy. They smelled blood.
That's right.
And absolutely destroyed them at that moment. And today it's not that kind of party. The last 2 months, Richard, if we go back 2 months ago, we've got the Davis Wilson docs, right? We've got the Senate and Capitol Hill getting briefed on the subject of UAPs. You've got Tucker Carlson and President Trump. You've got the Area 51 event. You've got the recent revelations with John Greenwald in the U.S. Navy.
Don't forget the Tucker Carlson, Luis Elizondo statement from May 31st of this year, where Elizondo actually acknowledged the recovery of crashed UFOs at the very end of that interview. That was astonishing.
Huge.
So that and everything else.
Yeah, it has been a whirlwind. And it doesn't seem to me, now I'm not going down a rabbit hole completely, but the Area 51 event came out of nowhere, right in the middle of all of this other stuff. And I just step back and I go, you know what? It could have been any other month. It could have been any other year. But it was now when everything else is happening at the same time. Is that coincidence? I'm not so sure. Everything is happening at the same time.
That's interesting speculation. I don't think that it's by design. I don't think that it was. This kid was, I think, Matty Roberts, I think his name was. I never got the reason to think that he was doing anything other than just having some fun. No, I mean, look, we're at a point in our. I think it's a cultural phenomenon, and that just happened to happen. And you know, where our social media has primed us to respond in this kind of manic form to all kinds of things. You know, we got the so-called outrage mobs and everything else that's going on, where people just kind of flame up instantly over all these kinds of issues. And in a sense, what you can see with the Area 51, the Storm Area 51 thing, is a similar aspect of that phenomenon, where through social media, you have this kind of instant acceleration of ideas and instant acceleration of emotions as well. And it just, I don't know, it just went viral at the right time.
Yeah.
That's how I see it anyway.
Yeah, and the whole flash mob phenomenon, that's the aspect, because you just don't know, right? You don't know until the moment that it happens. And that's the part of the Storm Area 51 event, for me, where I was a little bit uneasy. I mean, what if 3 million people showed up in Rachel, Nevada?
You know what's funny? In our book, AD After Disclosure, I mean, we wrote this 10 years ago. One of the things that I remembered speculating about, and we got it into the book, was in a disclosure type of scenario. You know, this was in the aftermath of the Occupy movement. In the revised edition of the book, after Occupy came out, I thought, you know, wouldn't there be the possibility of people getting really worked up and saying, let's occupy Area 51 or occupy Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? So we actually thought about this as a possibility nearly a decade ago. And so when this was kind of in the works this summer, I actively thought about that. But I really have never thought that this would ever amount to anything other than a whole lot of hot air.
Should we organize? Talk to Tracy about this. Should we do a UFO disclosure Occupy event at the Lincoln Memorial, Capitol Hill?
It's an interesting question. You know, there have been attempts to do this before. I mean, you've got all the press conferences that happened in the first decade and more of the 21st century. Even back in the 90s, there was a little-known protest group called Operation Right to Know. They were a UFO disclosure group that picketed outside the White House.
I remember the T-shirts. I remember the T-shirts. I remember that they actually had protest signs.
Yeah, they did.
I remember that.
They were out there, and I don't know how many there were, but they had some pictures taken. They were in the MUFON Journal. And if something like that were to be done today, man, you'd really want to make sure it's done with some rationality, I would like to think, and and not a lot of histrionics. I mean, it's a tough thing because on the one hand, for a public movement, you want to get people emotionally invested, so there's got to be some of that. But it always seems to me that anytime these protest movements happen, they don't go anywhere because there's really not a proper intellectual focus. So if there were to be a proper disclosure movement, I would like to see it well thought out before anything happens.
Just a thought.
I'm not volunteering myself. I'm just saying.
Yeah, we need you as a spokesman. Let's let's take our break right here. This is Fade to Black. I am your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, Richard Dolan. Lots to talk about. We'll pick everything up where we're leaving off right now, and we'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Richard Dolan. And I want to remind everybody before we get back to Richard, the new Fade or Not Hall of Fame, the Fade to Gallery, is up at jimmychurchradio.com. And you can send your images with your Fade to Black gear, your hat, whatever you got, your mug. You can write it on a piece of paper. Doesn't matter. Become a Fade or Not. Get yourself into the Hall of Fame. And you can submit all of your images to Fade to Gallery at jimmychurchradio.com. And if you need to, you can email me too as well, Jimmy at jimmychurchradio.com. Or you can email Richard Dolan. He does take my emails too as well, and he replies to all of my emails. Richard.
Yes, sir.
Kit Green. Now, Kit Green, when the news you broke about conversations with Kit, the email that I got, the phone conversations that I had with people going, okay, Jimmy, you've got to get Richard on the show. You're the guy to do this. And you and I did actually speak about timing of the possibility of speaking about Kit Green. Well, the moment is here.
We have not talked about my interview with Kit Green?
What's that? We have not.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we need to get into this.
Yeah, let's get into this. Now, a 2-minute historical perspective about what prompted you reaching out to Kit, which was the Davis Wilson docs.
That and also the 11-page alien autopsy email thread.
Right.
Both were leaked from the same source, and that source, it must be emphasized, were the papers of the late astronaut Dr. Edgar Mitchell, who died in January of 2017. And as a number of us, I'm not the only one who is aware of how this whole thing has happened. Grant Cameron's talked a lot about this too. But after Mitchell died, a number of his papers were not necessarily going to be preserved, all right? And they were preserved by someone who altruistically, I think it has to be said, knew that this would be a travesty and was allowed above board with permission to take a certain number of these papers out. And I do not know how many. I don't know the full extent. I don't know if they're all of great importance or trivial. I don't know that. But I do know that one of those documents was the 15-page document that we've been calling the Wilson document, the Eric Davis notes. Another is the 11-page email thread dealing with the alien autopsy, a whole discussion in 2001 on the Ray Santilli film. And there's more. Grant Cameron released another 1-page or 2-page memo from Robert Bigelow to Edgar Mitchell. It's not as important, but it does show these are all from Edgar Mitchell's files. Anyway, so that came out, the alien autopsy thread, and then the Wilson notes came out in the first week of June of this year, of 2019. And in fact, I think it was the alien autopsy email thread that came out like one day earlier. And when that came out, that was actually quite interesting too. Not as interesting, in my opinion, as the Wilson document, but still, what you have in 2001 are a group of scientists working for the National Institute of Discovery Science, for NIDS, that is for Robert Bigelow, high-level people, Hal Puthoff, Dr. Kit Green, Dr. Eric Davis, Dr. Colm Kelleher. These are very high-level, very intelligent scientists, all with security clearances, high-level security clearances as well. And even in 2001, when most of the UFO world had already decided the alien autopsy video was a fake or a hoax, these gentlemen are talking about it amongst themselves very quietly and mainly asking Kit Green, who's the medical expert, why he believes it was authentic. That's interesting. Now, that was interesting, but you could just say, well, Kit Green, no matter how well educated or smart he was, could still be wrong. Wouldn't necessarily be noteworthy. But what made that email thread noteworthy was the fact that Green said, yeah, the video is authentic because I was briefed in 1987 or 88 at the Pentagon and shown alien autopsy images and alien autopsy reports, and the images were identical to the Santilli film. That's what got my attention.
Yeah, it got my attention too. But
right.
And we're going to pause here. Richard, do you think that the alien autopsy film is authentic? You, Richard Dolan.
No. I mean, look.
Okay.
Even under the best circumstances, all right, what Santilli has said is that they had an original that they got. It was degraded beyond belief.
Fell apart in their hands. It dissolved.
And tried to recreate it. So that's his story.
Right.
So even under that, you have to say that no, it's not the real deal. But to me, the interesting question isn't that, and this is what everyone seems to be focusing on. You have some of the people who have researched the alien autopsy thing, and it's like they've got this tunnel vision, and it is the only question that they have on their mind. And I think what's a more interesting question is to ask why Kit Green.
That's my point.
Saw something that he claimed was identical to parts of the Santilli film. And by the way, so I wrote to him immediately that day, and I can just say, like, he was not happy that this had come out. He was very unhappy. And he wrote back and said, look, that's old news. That's 2001. I no longer believe that thing is authentic. I said, I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in this 1987 Pentagon briefing that you wrote about. And he wrote eventually later that day, said, well, I was hoaxed by the Pentagon. And my attitude was, what? Like, I don't understand this. You worked for the CIA for 20 years. You've had very high-level security clearances in your retirement while you were with General Motors. And you're deeply invested and knowledgeable of the UFO subject. You know, you've probably done hundreds of autopsies. He's an expert in that. And you're saying to me the Pentagon hoaxed you on this? A little explanation, please. And so some time went by, and eventually I did an interview with him in the middle of July of this year. It took me a while to get that interview transcribed and then to write an article about it.
And he said, don't release the interview.
Well, yeah, and look, this is not his fault. So when we did the interview, I think we each had a slightly different idea of what was going to happen. And I did have the idea that I would release a full transcript. This was never his idea, because some of the things he did tell me in that interview were off the record, and they were properly off the record. And
like what?
It wasn't entirely clear until I was about to publish the whole thing. Like, I was this close to doing it, and I did him the courtesy of telling him that, and he just said, no, absolutely not.
What did he say that was off the record?
Well, I'll tell you one thing he said that was off the record. We talked, the very end of the interview, we talked about the Wilson document. So the first thing I'll tell you, I asked him, is the alien autopsy thread authentic? And the only reason I even asked that is because some very, I think, ignorant people were claiming that the whole thing was a hoax. And I just wanted to get his statement. And the first thing he said about the alien autopsy email thread is that, yes, it's absolutely authentic, completely genuine. We had a long conversation about that, which I don't even know if we'll have enough time to get into all of that. But then I asked him at the very end about the Wilson document, and I wanted to know his thoughts on that. So he gave me a very interesting statement, and I'm actually scrolling to it, and he says, golly, where is it? Here we go. Here we go. He gave me an on the record and an off the record statement. On the record, this is verbatim. He said, on the record, I have agreed on the record that I have no authority to confirm that it is a legitimate memo because, in fact, the fact that I've seen it, the fact that I think one thing doesn't give me the authority to declare its provenance as legitimate. I can't do that, so I won't say that. That's the statement. And I'm thinking, thank you for that. That's a very clear statement to me. And then he gave me an off-the-record statement, and I'm not going to tell you, I can't tell you what it was, but I asked him, can I tell the world that you gave me an off-the-record statement? And he said yes, and I will certainly add that his off-the-record statement was very lengthy. He and I had a very long conversation about that document, which he knew extremely well.
So he
that.
Off the record, he said that the document was authentic.
No, on the record, he said that you're doing a good job here. Let's put it this way. I'm going to say this. After my extensive conversation with him off the record, my opinion of the Wilson document's authenticity was certainly solidified.
Right.
I'll say that. I'm trying to do him.
That's fine. I don't want to offend Kit, but
we had a look. He told me that I could say he gave me an off the record, and I was very grateful for that. And yes, I'm just adding that it was a very detailed, lengthy conversation off the record about the Wilson memo, the Wilson document by Eric Davis. Absolutely. And he gave me a couple of, quote, hypotheticals about Admiral Wilson on that document. He said the generic discussion in the document, again, he's distancing himself, he said was exceptionally familiar to him, his words.
Right.
So if you go through the incredible amount of detail in that 15-page document about the Admiral Wilson leak, and if someone is not familiar with this, and we apologize, but just I wrote articles on this. It's on my website. They're free of charge. You can just go find the articles. Got YouTube things on this. Get up to speed. This is important stuff. So Green said that was exceptionally familiar to him. And also he said Wilson's reaction, his anger at being locked out of the program. His basic statement was, look, yeah, a guy like that in his position would have thought he would have the ability to monitor a reverse engineered alien tech program. But he said, but no, he wouldn't have. This whole thing's become so privatized. Mm-hmm. The whole thing has become privatized. He said, one of the things he pointed out to me is in his own career and in everyone else's that he knows, he said, the rule is that when you leave federal employ and you go off to work in private industry, that's when your security clearances actually improve and become better and more numerous. He said that happened to him when he left the CIA. He'd been at the CIA for 20 years. He leaves the CIA and got better clearances as an executive with General Motors. And I just said, well, why does that happen? He said, well, because it's in private industry where all the action is. It's where private industry is, where all the brain power is, where all the where everything is happening. All the money is in private industry. So when there's anything that has to be done to deal with this type of a phenomenon, all right, it's in private industry. And so that's when you need more and better security clearances.
Now,
and that was an interesting insight, I thought.
And going back to him being hoaxed by the Department of Defense. Okay,
right,
so 2 or 3 points, and let's bang it out right away. One, it appears in the leaked thread that he believed in 2001 that the Santilli film was authentic, the alien autopsy. That's the way that I read it.
He did.
Okay.
He absolutely believed that. Yeah.
So how does he explain that away today? Not explain it away, but his change of heart that he says now that the film is not authentic and that the Pentagon hoaxed him. Let's get some clarification.
Well, I'll be honest
here.
and say, I respect him. I respect his intelligence, but I wasn't, even now, I'm not fully satisfied with his explanation at all. But one of the things he said to me is that during the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, he received at his doorstep, at his home, anonymously, a dozen or more alien autopsy videos. Can you imagine?
Mm-hmm.
More than a dozen. Not all had documentation with them, but some did. And, and at the same time, he had two mentors over a period of time, over a period of like 25 years, who had said to him, there is a UFO alien program, and I want to get you cleared to be in it because we need someone of your particular background. So through the 1980s, while he was still with CIA, this was going on, and he was expecting it to happen. And in fact, that was the situation in 1987 or 88, whenever this was, that he was summoned to the Pentagon for this briefing. He assumed, he said to me, that this was going to be the briefing where they laid out everything and showed him alien autopsy film and said everything. And in fact, what they did was they didn't show him a film, which he was expecting. They showed him some still glossies and some autopsy reports with not much other explanation involved there. He said, am I getting anything else? And the briefing officer said, you will not. And that was it. And according to Green, he never really got a proper follow-up or any follow-up from that briefing. And so he became suspicious of it. Through the 2000s, his original mentor died eventually in the 90s, and he had a second mentor. These are high-level people in the world of special access programs. And the second one also said, I'm going to get you cleared for this program. We need you. So he went through this merry-go-round a second time, which lasted for years. And it was like the carrot being dangled, but it never materialized for him. So I think what happened with Kit Green is that over the years, he became much more skeptical of the extraterrestrial explanation for UFOs. He seems to believe in UFOs, but I don't know that he goes so far today to say that it's alien bodies, alien autopsies, and any of that. And he believes that he was the victim of what is called an active measures program. And this is a very big thing within the intelligence community. And the idea of an active measures program, as he explained to me also, is you take, even a high-level expert in a field, you give them a certain amount of disinformation to make them believe that. And it's really a test to see how good your disinformation can be. He says this is very common. I have to take him for what he's saying. I don't know how common these are, but he says that they're quite common.
So they used him. Are you saying, I just want to be clear here, are you saying that he suggested that they were testing their disinformation capabilities on him, and that's how he was hoaxed?
Right.
Do you buy that?
Now, he doesn't have proof for it. So I challenged him on this. I said, seriously, that's taking a heck of a big risk. This is someone who is high-level expertise.
Right.
In every aspect of medicine, biology, and genetics, and every related science that you can imagine. He really knows it. He's top of the game and has been that for his whole professional life. Plus, he's got this strong foundation of knowledge of the UFO phenomenon in general. I would think even the Pentagon trying to hoax him in an active measures program, that's taking a heck of a risk for someone like him. And so I was very dubious about it.
They could have Paul Benewitzed him. You know what I mean? They could have Paul Benowitz. What if they messed with his very psyche, with his very professional mind, trained, learned guy, and then you go and you spin that on him?
Right.
Wow.
And then you have the whole situation of these alien autopsies that landed mysteriously at his doorstep over a period of years. On one occasion, at least, he took this to a highly respected expert colleague of his who brought it to his colleagues. So it was a film, and with documentation. And they studied the documentation, and it was the opinion of this expert that this was an elaborate hoax. Now, I don't know how to judge that as a hoax or not, right?
Yeah, and well, see, if it was to the standard, right, to the level of standard for somebody like Kit Green, who has cut open more dead bodies than you and I have, you know what I mean? If it rises to that level of standard where he's comfortable enough to take it to colleagues around him for their opinion, how good was this video?
Colleagues with high level clearances as well. These are very, very high professional types. A very high level.
How good was the film? It wasn't Santilli's film, I can tell you that.
Well, the film, no, that's correct. The film that he took to them was an alien autopsy type film that they determined was a genuine autopsy of a being that looked like an alien, but they determined through their own expertise was a progeric, that is someone of rapid onset aging progeria. So not an alien. That was their conclusion in that particular case. But the thing is, this was a carrot. These were a series of carrots that dangled in front of him for a long period of time. And, you know, the question arises, who did this? He doesn't know who did it. His suspicion is that some of the alien autopsy videos might have been created by private industry within the classified world. And I said, well, why would that be? And the reason, I'm trying to remember exactly here. This is a quote that he has. He says, "I've never been able to let go of that document." This is the one I was just telling you about. "Some of the words in the document referring to some of the techniques to do the reverse transcriptase subtests were not invented yet. They were invented 15 years later, just in the last 5 years. And my only conclusion," he says, "it's my hypothesis, this is not a proof, is the hoax was developed at the top by the people who subsequently, in the classified biological programs, went on to patent the technologies 6, 7, 8, 10 years later." And that still doesn't really answer the question, like, why hoax Kit Green on these? I mean, I don't get it. That's if they were hoaxing him. That's if they were hoaxing him. The fact is, I don't know, and you don't know, and Kit Green says he knows, but does he really know what these things were? I mean, this is his opinion, is that he was hoaxed.
Is Kit at a position now where he's thought about this? You know, you're getting, you know, in the other stages of your life, you know, you're in the fourth quarter. Is he interested in just, you know, clearing this up and going public and speaking about this?
I think that's why he spoke with me this summer, to be honest with you. He doesn't, I can tell you, he doesn't relish the idea of being in the public eye about this.
Right.
You know, he came to me basically because I approached him first about the email thread. And I think he probably knew that I wasn't going to let it go immediately. And I think he just thought he'll come out and talk to me. In his opinion, I think he has come out in the sense of, like one thing he said to me was, you know, I was right where you are now 10, 15 years ago, like 15 years ago. And he said, I just don't believe that anymore. I don't believe that we're dealing with, you know, beings from Zeta Reticuli coming to Earth, I think, as he put it. So
you know,
he was not very clear what he did believe, though.
And what is surprising to me is the amount of people and researchers that I know and respect that have come out and said, see, I told you the film was real. And I'm just like, wait a minute here. And that's the other effect that leaked document, 2001, but that's the weight of Kit Green. And now it's...
And let me just mention this. This is really important to state this, because even now, after all these years, he continues to maintain that some of the elements that he was shown in the Pentagon were identical. And I'm going to read this. So, I mean, just to be clear, though, in his view, the film and the briefing were both hoaxes. So the Santilli film was a hoax, and also the briefing was a hoax. But I just want to read, this is a statement he wrote. Let me repeat, several shots from the pictures I was shown then later appeared in what he calls the grainy Santilli film. Not the body. I never said it was the body. It was the face still. It was the shot of the subject. It was the shot of the wall. It was the shot of the table. It was the shot of a part of a foot. It was not the shot that I could say was the same body. So he's trying to qualify, saying, no, not the body. The body's different. But he's saying the face was the same, and a number of other things from the Santilli film were the same as what he claims to have been shown. And he actually, I think he said something like, Santilli may have made up some of it, but he couldn't have made up all of it. That was almost exactly how he said it to me. So there's something that he will maintain, that he maintains to this day, that he was shown in the Pentagon that was identical or virtually, let's say. I mean, how can you really know if it's identical? One is in 1987, then you've got, 7, 8 years later, you see the film. How good is his memory? But let's assume it's good enough that he felt very strongly that this thing was at least, if not identical, then very close. That to me is the interesting thing. And what does that say to us, right? What does that say? What if that is true?
I don't want to.
What he's saying actually is the case.
And here it's like, here we go. Here we go again, where we have to wait.
Here's one thing.
Let me say, hold on. Let me say this, Richard.
Yes.
I need to take a break in 30 seconds. You are on vacation right now, and you have to be up in the morning. Do you want to continue this conversation after this break? Look at Tracy now.
I'm looking. All right. We're going to do a thumbs up, and we're going to go. You knew this would happen. I maintain. I was going to say 90 minutes. We're going to go for the 2.
Let's go. Okay, so let's take our break right now. Okay? Let's do it. Okay. We'll take our break. Our guest tonight is Richard Bleepin' Dolan. You knew he wasn't going to go to bed. Richard, thank you so much. Stay right there. We'll be right back after this short break. This is Fade to Black. Thank you, Tracy. Welcome back, Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Richard Dolan. You can follow Richard right there on Twitter, at Rich Dolan. And, of course, Rich, your YouTube channel. What's the name of the channel?
It's just Richard Dolan. I think it's actually YouTube/Richard M. Dolan. But if you just go to YouTube and type in my name, I think you'll get to my channel pretty easily.
What does M stand for?
Michael.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yes.
I was going to say it stands for BMF, but I have, you remember the BMF wallet in Pulp Fiction, right?
Oh, wow. Yeah. My memory is gone far, far away.
Well, you know what the acronym stands for. We don't need to say it publicly, but.
Oh, yes. Exactly. And it does not stand for that.
It doesn't. I have a BMF wallet. Somebody sent it to me.
You're cooler than I am.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so where'd we leave off? Kit Green.
Right, we were getting this. This is good that we're talking about this because I haven't done many interviews about this. I'm trying to do justice to him. He was very careful in saying the things that he said. He's a very precise man. He's a very precise person. This is a man who worked 20 years at the CIA. He is an intelligence officer with high-level expertise in the biological medical sciences, and is well known for his interest in UFOs and running the so-called weird desk at the CIA, which, in fact, we talked a little bit about that too, which he really downplayed. He said, look, my job at the CIA almost had very little to do with phenomena, paranormal, UFOs. A little bit, he said. Most of it did not. He said most of his UFO stuff came in his downtime when he would go to SRI and hang out with people like Hal Puthoff. So, but he's definitely interested in it.
The release of the film, talking about Santilli now. Santilli is, he's now back in the public, and his co-producer of the film. The release of the film, we knew it was coming, and I ordered it from a Tower Video, and couldn't wait for it. I paid my $60 or $70, whatever I paid for that video back then. Was a lot of dosh, and I had a viewing party at my place, and maybe 4 or 5 of my friends all came over. We were all excited about it, and we pop it in the VCR, and we knew it was bogus. Right? I mean, I was just like out of the gate, and we got to the end of it, just like, we got snowed. I got taken. I feel bad for Winston, for him to go on the record at the end of that film, and
that's right. The FX expert, Winston.
Stan Winston, and the pathologist. I can't think of his name right now.
Cyril Wecht.
Yes, Cyril Wecht, the famous Cyril Wecht, going on the record, and I just felt that it was completely bogus. That has been my attitude since. I've gotten into some pretty heated arguments with some people of note about this that have always maintained the film's authenticity, and I just don't understand what people see. Is it that they see what they want to see, and they are completely convinced, and you're never going to change their mind? I don't understand that aspect of it.
You're asking me to comment on this. I'm trying to think what I want to say here. I am only aware that there are studies being done on this, like right now, and I don't know when they will be released. I don't know when, as in analyses. You know what I mean? So
on Santilli's,
see those come out
on Santilli's film,
possibly. This is the word.
What could possibly be analyzed? I mean,
I don't know.
Santilli's gone on the record. Santilli's gone on the record many times, going, "It's fake." We staged it.
I read his statement on Grant Cameron's Facebook page, which I'm guessing you saw as well.
Yes.
And he didn't quite say fake, if you recall. He said something different. I'm not saying he's right. I'm just saying this is his claim is not the same as fake, right? His claim is that they tried to recreate something. So that's his claim. You don't have to believe it. But
no, the recreation part.
He said is fake.
Right. So the analysis is on his.
It's not authentic. It's not a genuine. What's the word? Genuine or authentic? It's not authentic. It's not the
autopsy
thing.
Right.
I think we can agree on that for sure.
Okay. And that, what he has maintained is there may be a couple of frames of film. I know that Philip Mantle posted some pictures. I don't know if you caught this a couple of weeks ago. He went through his belongings, Phil, a couple of weeks ago, and found a couple of canisters from Ray Santilli. And in one of those canisters was a couple of frames of the alien autopsy film. And he posted them on Facebook. They're right there. And he's got the 2 film canisters. The film canisters are your 6-inch, 8-inch, film canisters. Are not, really big 16 millimeter cans. They're the small ones. But I'm wondering if those are the 2 frames of film that Santilli has always maintained made it into the original recreation, as we call it. And I think that's a position that Santilli has maintained. But the film itself being, for those out there that think that it is the film of a real alien autopsy, it is not. I don't know what other people want to believe or why they want to maintain.
Yeah, you're probably right. I'm sure you're right. All I know is that there's something being done on it now. A deep analysis of it, from what I've heard. Not even sure by whom. This is only the word that I've been told. So hopefully it can come out. It would be interesting to see if something like that were to come out.
Now, with everything, let's get to the nuts and bolts of this. With everything that has busted out over the last few months, and it has been a whirlwind, I asked you, this is a few years ago, I asked you in an opening question, I said, Richard, you're respected and you're the face of ufology and we love you for that. Do you have to watch the words that you speak? And your answer was, yes, I do. Actually, I do. But
yes, all the time.
Today,
and I often don't do it well enough.
Well, which is the question. Today, where you're continued to get yourself more solidified in your respect, does that open the door to more freedom of opinion, where you're not as careful with your words anymore, that you're just going to lay it out there the way that you really think that it needs to be said? Has it changed for you over the years?
The only thing that's changed that is age. So as it has nothing to do with my perceived status in this field or not. I think it actually has to do with just the fact that I'm a bit older now. Mm-hmm. And so when I was, earlier on in my career in this, I was very explicitly conservative in my expression of certain, opinions I had about the nature of the UFO phenomenon and so on. And I mean, not that conservative really, but a little bit more than I am now. I think as I've gotten a little older, I feel a little more comfortable in my skin talking about this and even talking off the cuff. So I think that I'm a little bit more free to talk about things.
See,
I have to be really careful. I've got to be, not just me, but anyone who's a public person. You have to be careful because, you can easily say the wrong thing. And in this era, it is so easy for people to take things you say and take them out of context and really harm you with it. So you've got to be very careful in a way that wasn't the case a generation ago. And also there's just the responsibility. Like I try to be very careful with what I say because there are people out there who are new to this subject. They don't know a lot, and they're instinctively they're going to look for someone that they see as an authority. And if they see me as an authority, I have to be very careful, and I don't want to abuse that trust. So I do try to be very careful. Yeah.
It sounds like you're being careful now with what you're trying to say. It's that important.
Well, I am actually. Yes, I'm always trying to be careful. I try. It's just a matter of saying what exactly I believe. So I try not to speak in metaphor that much. I try not to speak in imagery. I try to speak exactly what my meaning is. And so I'm always trying to choose my words carefully in my writing and in my speech. On a good day.
Can we look forward to the day where you're a cranky old dude and you don't care anymore?
Oh, I'm getting there. I can assure you. But even if I get to be a cranky old dude, I hope that I'll be clear with my meaning, and I hope that I'll be precise with what I'm trying to say. There was a great series of articles. I'm a big Orwell fan, like a lot of people are fans of George Orwell. I'm a huge fan of George Orwell. And in one of his very best essays, which is called Politics and the English Language, which I recommend to everyone who cares about clear writing. It's a classic. But one thing Orwell pointed out is like when you're speaking, it really helps for you to see visually in your head what you're saying. So, because all too often we use prepackaged words and prepackaged phrases that are out there to do our thinking for us, cliches that are just readily available. You can just sort of pick them out of the air, as it were. And he said it's almost remarkable. You can go through an entire sentence, paragraph, page, chapter without doing any thinking on your own. You can just pull these phrases out of the air. He says the real key is to know what you are saying at all times, to see what you're saying. And I took that to heart. So that's sometimes why I will be very careful with what I'm saying, especially in something that's important, because I really want to make sure that what I'm saying is exactly what I mean. And that forces me to think about, well, what is it that I mean? Like I got to think it through. And sometimes I don't know what it is until I actually stop and think, and then I can try to explain it.
On page 15 of the Davis Wilson docs, where the statement is made, that came from somebody else, but nonetheless, the statement there, UFOs are real, abductions are not. Mm-hmm. What does that statement do, and what is your opinion on the abduction phenomenon? Where we have millions of people around the world that have had these experiences, and you go and you read that, it seems to conflict with direct experiences and testimony of, I can't even put a number on how many people.
Mm-hmm. Well, we have to remember what that memo is. So it's 15 pages. There are actually 13 pages of notes by Eric Davis, and then a 2-page letter that he inserted in there. So it's Davis's notes based on what Wilson apparently told him while they were sitting in a car for a little over an hour. And so this is Wilson's information as he's getting it from someone else high up in the Pentagon who told him this, that abductions aren't real. So that's the statement, and you can take it for what it's worth. Does that mean it's true? Well, it may not be true. You and I both looked into the phenomenon of alien abduction. I've looked into it, and I tend to think that it is a true thing, that there are abductions. In fact, I would say that I believe that, with a pretty high degree of probability. So when I read that, I thought, why would such and such a person say that to Admiral Thomas Wilson? Well, maybe he knew what he was talking about. Maybe he didn't know what he was talking about. If he knew what he was talking about, maybe he was only getting his information from a very limited source. Where did he get his information from? We have no idea in that document, in those notes. We just don't know. So, for me, I just take it as a statement that some guy said. Maybe he's got some backing for it, and maybe not. Or maybe he was telling Wilson what he wanted Wilson to think. Who knows? I don't know. And we don't know. So I tend not to put a whole lot of emphasis on that particular statement. Now, what I do, we could say the same thing about almost everything that's in that document, frankly. Mm-hmm. You could say that the guys in the private access, special access program who talked to Wilson were just selling Wilson, some more snake oil and just telling him what they wanted him to think. It's entirely possible. You could theorize that they were lying to him when they said that they had an intact craft that was not from any nation on Earth, not made by human hands. According to the notes, that's what they told him. Mm-hmm. Now, you could say maybe that's truthful, maybe that isn't truthful. They could have been lying to him. I tend to think that part was truthful, and the reason I think so is because Wilson was sitting in an extended meeting with them, looking over according to the notes, he actually was able to look at least some of the list of the people who were cleared to be in the program. They apparently had a long conversation about this. And indeed, the meeting was explicitly prompted by Wilson's belief that this was about some kind of ET tech program. So maybe they told him that just to get him off their back. He wasn't cleared to be knowledgeable about the program, but he was high enough that maybe they thought they would throw him this bone. I don't really know. Like maybe that was it, or maybe they.
And that was an interesting takeaway for me too in this document. In that everywhere that Wilson went, every phone call, every conversation, he got shut down.
Particularly in the aftermath. What was interesting in the early parts of the notes, Wilson's talking to Secretary of Defense William Perry. Or actually recent Secretary of Defense. He had just retired from that. Mm-hmm. William Perry he's still alive. Perry is still alive. I think he's 95 years old now. William Perry was and is a very impressive man and ran Bill Clinton's Defense Department for the first couple of years of the Clinton White House and did a reorg. And this actually, according to Kit Green, did a reorg of how the special access programs were being managed within the Defense Department and giving them much, much greater, deeper levels of secrecy. And so when Wilson I think about midway through the document, he's asking around for advice on how to find this theoretical SAP, the Special Access Program, dealing with alien technology. And Perry helped him. In the notes, he said, William Perry helped me look in the right places. That was really interesting to me. And then, of course, once he found out, he was shut down over and over again.
As we move forward in this, what appears to me to be disclosure. I mean, I hate to use that word now, but certainly I feel pretty comfortable, better now than I ever have in the UFO subject. And as we move forward, then we have this other aspect of it, where we have hybrids and seeding programs and a worldwide ET influence that is, it's widely talked about. And you think about all of the experiencers that get together in groups and speak about this. If this disclosure thing moves forward, what does that do with all of these experiencers and seeding programs and hybrid children stuff? Does that get validated? Do those people rise up and go, see, I told you? And that's a whole nother part of this that needs to be talked about and brought out into the open.
I mean, I don't know. It's a really good question. It's an important question. We're at a point where we've got different tendencies going on right now. So on one is you've got the folks in TTSA, which I have long seen as not as a CIA operation. I think that's totally wrong. Totally wrong. I see them as a faction that has connections with the intelligence community, military community, and they've got their allies in the media. They've got their allies in Congress, and they've got their allies elsewhere, and they're getting a disclosure narrative out there for their own purposes, which we can get into sometime. And they're pushing this forward, and they're making some progress. At the same time, there are cultural things going on in terms of the ability to share information, our global connectivity, and that's what led to the leak of some of Edgar Mitchell's papers. So these are pushing things in a certain direction. And I wondered if there might be a rollback of that, but I don't think so. I think we're moving forward now. I think there's some traction here, and there's a feedback loop going on with all of this information coming out. At the same time, however, when you think about the UFO secret, you're seeing something that's deeply, deeply privatized, something that I've been recently calling legal illegality. In other words, look at the example within the Wilson document, the Wilson notes, where he's deputy head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He believed he had the ability at least to monitor this program, and he was not at all. And in fact, it turns out like a very, very few people seem to have any authority over that at all. It's all private contractors. All U.S. government is basically providing money and infrastructure for major private defense contractors to reverse engineer and study this stuff. And does the U.S. government, even does the U.S. military ever benefit from it, is a really important question to ask. And the answer is possibly not. It very possibly, for all we know, stays within the private world. That's an interesting thing. So on the one hand, information's coming out, but on the other hand, how much knowledge does even a United States president or a Secretary of Defense or CIA director have about this? The answer is we don't know. We don't know how much they know and how much their authority is. Legally, at least officially, you could say the United States president would have the authority to issue executive orders and get this out. But is that really the case? Is it really true? I interviewed a man over a decade ago, retired Air Force, high-level officer, PhD, smart man, who was all over this subject of UFOs, and told me that he, on one occasion, interviewed a dying man who had been at Roswell in a military hospital, in a secure facility accompanied by Air Force police, and he interviewed this man. And this man had been at Roswell, and the high-level officer said to me, yeah, I believed him. I mean, everything seemed to check out. And he said at the end of our conversation, I just offered the opinion to this man. I said, it's really too bad that the world doesn't know about all that you did. It's heroic, and it's an amazing part of our history, and they'll never know. Wouldn't it be great if there was a presidential executive order that would liberate you from your secrecy oath. And he said the man scoffed and chuckled. He said, it would take a hell of a lot more than a presidential executive order to liberate me from my secrecy oath. That's what this guy said.
That's powerful.
And I asked the Air Force officer, well, what do you think he meant? And he said, well, what do you think he meant? And we both talked, and we thought, well, there's people like the Bilderberg Group, and there's people who are behind the U.S. presidents, and we both assume that that's what we're talking about. This secret, I firmly believe, goes beyond our formal political and institutional authorities, and it's gone into places that we don't know how to get back at it. There are legal issues we have to resolve here. We've got to be able to find a way to get through the special access programs to gain access to the information that's in there. And right now, it seems to me we just don't. We just don't. And so on the one hand, you've got this cultural movement toward, let's call it a disclosure, or let's call it an openness of some sort about UFOs. Sure, I think we can see that. On the other hand, we're in an era of, fake democracy. We don't really have democracy. We haven't had that for who knows how long. We have an oligarchy, obviously, in which a very small group of people are running things. And not only that, they're operating, by and large, outside the governmental system with governmental military protection and with our money to help fund them. How do you get at these people? That's the question. So on the one hand, yeah, we're getting more information out, but on the other hand, it doesn't look to me that we've got a good way to grab hold of this and understand. And then the whole issue of abductions, encounters, experiences. We need a serious level of leaks, whistleblowers, credible whistleblowers, not the non-credible kind. We need genuinely credible whistleblowers and genuine leaks of the kind that we're starting to get. And we just need a lot more of them until we get some kind of critical mass. And then what will happen? Well, then we're going to get to a collision of some sort within our greater society of this truth that will be forming in the public mind and the reality that we don't have access to it. And I fear the result of that collision, to be perfectly honest with you. But
and let me ask you
one
this.
thing that I see.
I want to go back to your point on TTSA, which is, if Tom DeLonge steps to the side, right, he goes out Angel and Airwaves, he goes back to Blink 182, and he's doing his thing, and Jim Semivan takes it over. They are nearly a 100% CIA counterintelligence staffed company at that point. Do you still trust the narrative and the message coming out of TTSA if you don't even have a civilian work?
I'm just going to say you've got to. The first order of business is to listen to what they're saying and to look at the information and to judge the data.
Right.
All right. And so if we're not doing that, then we're doing it all wrong. So we have to understand, what are they saying? What is their information? And can we analyze, judge that information? If we're able to, then fine, then talk.
Right.
The fact is, there's always going to be people inside the intelligence community, and there's always going to be different angles and different. They're not all the same. It's not all a monolithic community. No one believes that. How could anyone possibly believe that? You got CIA and NSA. They're competitors. The FBI is a competitor. They compete with each other for money and for prestige. They're all going against each other frequently. So obviously there's going to be different agendas within that. So I have to say this, to dismiss automatically in knee-jerk fashion someone because you don't like the organization they're from, that's a really big mistake. We do that too much in our society already.
Right. We're not talking about
they are.
We're not talking about Ford or General Motors. Okay, we're talking about the CIA. And
it always comes down to the same thing. What are they saying? Can we judge? Can we test their information? All right. And if we're able to, then I would just say keep talking. It's that simple.
Oh, well, if there was a company, a film production company here in Hollywood that was staffed with the very same people, right? And they're cranking out films with a message. And we would step back and go, come on. Well, it's the same thing with TTSA.
I'm not saying don't judge their spin. I'm not saying don't analyze their spin. I do it all the time. They have a spin. They've got a very definite take on this, and it's very carefully manicured, right? It's a very carefully manicured message. So we're allowed to critique that. But we're also foolish if we don't look at the information they provide with us. That is, information on the Tic Tac UFO encounter, information on the USS Roosevelt encounters, insights into crash retrievals and secrecy and metamaterials. All of those are worth our attention. And I just maintain that we are foolish if we ignore that at the expense of saying, oh, they're CIA, so let's not listen to them. To me, that's just going about it the wrong way.
No, I'm saying trust, then verify. That's my thing.
I don't even say that. I say analyze the information and then make up a decision.
And you know what, Richard, we could just keep on going, and I won't do that to you, my friend. I really won't. Enjoy the rest of your vacation and hang out with Tracy and have a great time. Thank you so much. And really quick, when is your next live stream? Can you announce that?
I think Tuesday. I think Tracy and I are doing an intelligent disclosure. Well, our vacation ends tomorrow. We're going to be driving back, but I'll probably do a live stream with Tracy on Tuesday, and that's on our YouTube channel.
There you go. Have a safe drive. Thank you so much, Richard. Great conversation as always. Keep doing your thing. Thank you so much.
Same here, Jimmy. Thanks a lot.
Right on. Richard Dolan, and I'm going to take my break right here. Thank you so much, Richard. Thank you, Tracy. Enjoy your drive back. Of course, everything is right there at jimmychurchradio.com. You can go and reach out to Richard. His YouTube channel and everything else is right there at jimmychurchradio.com. I'm going to take a break and come back and open up the phone lines. I know everybody's got something to say about this conversation tonight. It was great. I'll be right back after this short break. Stay with us. Welcome back, Fade to Black. Thank you, Richard Bleepin' Dolan. That was a great conversation. Perfect, really. Phone lines are open, 747-228-2051. 747-228-2051. Lots of takeaways I've got on this. I want your opinions on what was just discussed. Kit Green was very, very interesting. The United States Navy and UAPs, very, very interesting. Alien hybrids and seeding programs, very, very interesting. Great way to close out the show. Abductions, disclosure, and where we are headed. And I thought all of that was spot on. Spot on. And TTSA, right? The point as we close out the show, speaking about TTSA, again, 747-228-2051. All of the phone lines are open right now. 747-228-2051. Normally, after Richard Dolan is on, the switchboard here is jammed. And it is not right now. I'm interested. Wow, that's a pretty interesting takeaway. Are you guys? Okay. 747-228-2051. See, whenever that happens, I always think it's me. All right, let's go back to TTSA. I brought up the point, and it's a real one. It's a real point. If Tom DeLonge walks away, and Jim Semivan takes over, right? If Jim Semivan walks in and now it is suddenly a CIA staffed, how do I say this? Counterintelligence staffed, DOD staffed company. If that doesn't raise alarms, the same thing. If a Hollywood production company, a film company, had the same type of staff with the same layout of everybody, top to bottom, what would we do with their films? How would we consider that? Right? It would just be like any, I don't know. Very, very slanted. The other thing that I wanted to get to Richard, and everybody that is on hold, stay right there. Scott, I see you. I'm going to put you on hold. You're going to be up next. If I just want to say this in the kindest, gentlest way. If you are wrestling a narrative and your spin on a subject, in this case it's UFOs, but it could be anything. It could be religion. It could be science. It could be car tires. It doesn't matter. Where you want to be the de facto monopoly on the information and nothing else is considered, right? Only you are right. Everybody else is wrong, and only listen to us. That is where that's where I throw up the red flags. I mean, there isn't any consideration for anything else. So there you go. All right, let's go to the phones. What's up, Scott? How you doing?
Jimmy, you the bomb, baby.
How you doing? I know that.
I'm doing all right, man.
I know that. I know that.
Hey, listen, I got to throw this one out for the Hoosiers, okay?
Okay.
There's too many damn secrets. Who the hell is in control?
Secrets with what?
Well, behind the gates, we got UFOs flying everywhere, and I think our government knows exactly who these people are, but they're not telling anyone. And we're just like a bunch of puppets. What is this disinformation, like Nick Redford talked about the other night? Do you think it's by the Russians that are trying to flow us off with all the infos?
Well, we're doing the same things with the Russians, too, as well, and the rest of the planet.
Of course.
Of course. Yeah, not only with UFOs, but with anything. It's a constant. When you look at all of the media, government run or allegedly privately run, it doesn't matter, that you are running everything through a filter. Every press conference, every release, every statement from the Department of Defense or the energy industry, pharmaceutical, it doesn't matter whether, right? It doesn't matter, science and education. Everything has got to be run through a filter to see where the real truth is, because you want anybody else out there to get thrown off the real truth, thrown off the scent, thrown off the trail. That's a fact, So is this about life against life, countries against countries, or is this something else that we have to hide ourselves from other entities coming in? Well, okay, all right. Look at it this way, Scott. And I talked about this so much for so long that I thought that everybody understood what I was trying to say. But if we go back. Okay, let's go back for a second and analyze this for real. The banking system. I don't want to sound like David Icke. I don't want to sound like Alex Jones. Alex Jones. I don't want to go there. I just want to state the facts. And there are a couple of banking families. It doesn't matter the names. In fact, a couple of them you don't even know. No. Well, possibly. I mean, yes, but that's easy. But there are other names out there that you've never even heard of. Okay? All right. So that being said, those banking families have investments through corporate entities and investment funds around the world that are very old, that quite frankly have bought up everything. So when you look at something like Reuters, API, right, United Press, right, they are owned by one company now. That one company, that one, now owns the major news wires that feed RT, BBC, Sky News, Fox, MSNBC, CNN. All are fed the same information from the same source. So that part of it, that it's a genuine monopoly. So that news is fed around the world and is controlled by somebody well above and well outside of the White House. And
so who is this and what web do we weave?
What I'm trying to suggest to you is this. What we need to fully understand, this is not a conspiracy thing. This isn't one world order, new world order, Illuminati crazy talk. This is the facts. This is black and white. All right? This isn't, I'm not Alex Jones. That's not what I'm suggesting here. What I'm telling you is the facts. So when you have the news taken over by one company and their motivation, which is obviously money, and the domination of world markets that is well beyond and outside of everything that you can conceive of, outside of hedge funds, outside of the stock market, outside of all, it's above all of that. That is the money that is moved around the world, period. And if they directly own the news, then the news that they feed only benefits them. And that same news that they are control of feeds Moscow, feeds the United States, feeds China.
Their agenda.
And that's it. That's it. There isn't anything else to discuss. So that money, that very money that I'm talking about, also through industry, not only controls the petroleum and energy markets, but they control the health markets and the pharmaceuticals. All of this is owned by somebody else. And when you filter down through that, then it comes down to bullets and missiles and shipbuilding and arming and armies and wars and everything else. And a war goes off. They are selling bullets literally to both armies. The more bullets fired, the more profit that they make. How is this motivated and how is it instigated? Well, they control the news, and they're flaming out both sides, and they're red-pilling everybody. And that is way above the Oval Office. It's way above any monarchy that is out there, or the Kremlin, or Beijing, or Hong Kong, or Tokyo, Johannesburg. It's way above all of that. And
Jimmy, what a sick and demented world that we live in. And you have no wonder why these entities are coming down here?
Well, see, this is the other side of this that we have to take a serious look at, is that these families that have been established for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, and the trading and the banking system and the manufacturing and the farms and the feeding of the world, and all of everything that the loans and stuff. This goes back a long, long ways.
Of course, so but are these guys above humanity? Are these guys
Scott,
that egotistical to shut us down?
Scott, we're getting ahead of our skis. The influences and the motivation and the belief system that was established for them goes back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Is it a religious decision? Is it an off-planet influence? Is it something else? Is it some kind of occult alchemical thing? I don't have those answers. And the reason why we will probably never have those answers is these are people that none of us will ever know. we will never meet. It is from a world that we don't understand and we're never exposed to.
Very bizarre.
Look, when you look at the port at Monaco, and you look at 50 ships that are called yachts, but they're ships,
right?
And they're docked there, and
100 million apiece,
300 million, right? And, now, who can buy that? Now, I'm not talking about a billionaire, somebody with $1 billion in the bank. You're not going to spend half of your wealth on a $300 million yacht. This is money that, and when we are talking about, you're talking about Sam Walton or Bill Gates or Zuckerberg and Bezos, and you're talking about that money. There are families out there with a lot more money. We're talking about, accumulated wealth of $1 trillion or more. And
never mentioned.
And that's and they look at somebody, look at a Bezos and go, yeah, he's got some power. He's got Amazon, but he doesn't have that much money. That's what I'm talking about. And it's a world that you will never, ever be exposed to. And neither will, some guy like President Trump, who is, he might have a few $1 billion of accumulated wealth, right? Right. He's not a player. He's not a player in this picture. He's not. Tom Cruise, he's worth, $500 million? That's nothing to these families of a real accumulated wealth that control. And
how dare them take advantage of humanity?
Well, yeah, of course, that's the obvious statement. That's the obvious statement, and I understand that. That's the obvious thing to say, but it's of a world and a belief system that goes back hundreds of years that we quite frankly don't understand. It's
I get it. That's just that, but that's absolutely insanity right there.
Well, look, I don't understand. And I've got everybody on hold, but this is a good conversation.
I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. What I don't understand is that there are hundreds of people, hundreds of individuals on this planet that could let go of 1% of their wealth. 1%. And everybody on this planet is healthy, educated, and living correctly. And fed. That's it. Why doesn't that happen? Why, simply put, why doesn't that happen?
That is a great question.
I don't understand. I don't know. If you, Scott, I did the math on this once. If you had $1 billion, how old are you? Mm-hmm. How old are you?
I'm not, dude. We got the same birthday. You're on the 10th, and I'm on the 6th. I'll be 57.
You're going to be
57. 56.
Okay, let's say you're a billionaire at the age of 57, and you live 13 more years. You make it to the age of 70. Okay,
right.
365 days times 13. Right. Do the math.
Okay.
Do the math. It's not much. Right. 3,000 days. Right. 3,500 days left. That means you would have to spend $500,000 a day every day for the rest of your life to blow through that money. $500,000 a day. How much jewelry, homes, real estate, and
hookers and blow?
For the rest of your life. So, looking at how much money is too much. How much money is too much? How much money is enough? Where do you reach the point where you go, you know what? I think I can live on $100,000 a day. All right. I'll tighten the belts.
You know what?
I'll tighten the belts and I'm going to give the rest of it away. Right?
Right. I've got a Down syndrome sister, and I donate a lot of money to my Down syndrome sister every year. And I don't make a ton of money, but I give my donations to wherever I can. But you're right. I look at these people that are filthy rich. How much money do they really need?
I need some money. You can give to the Jimmy Church Poor Boy Fund.
Okay. How much you need?
I'll talk to you, Scott. Have a great night, man. We'll see you
too, my brother.
We'll see you
I love
tomorrow.
talking with you, man.
Right
Peace
on.
out.
We'll see you tomorrow night on Fader Night. I'm going to get Scott to donate to the Jimmy Church Poor Boy Fund because, you know, I'm po. I'm po. Hi, you're live on Fade to Black. Who's calling?
Hi, Jimmy. It's Deb from Sacramento.
Hi, Deb from Sacramento. How are you?
Good. Hey, great show tonight, as always.
Yeah. You expect that. Can you imagine how bad of a host would you have to be to screw up a Richard Dolan interview?
You could just mute your mic and let him go.
That's it. That's all I do. I just sit here and drink coffee, interject a couple of times, and just press play. Just press play on Dolan. But yeah, what a great conversation. What stands out for you?
Oh, boy. Okay, the topic of TTSA. I don't make a habit after what Joe Rogan did to Tom DeLonge with that interview of listening to Joe Rogan anymore, but there was a clip on YouTube, and it was a short clip, that got my attention not too long ago, and so I listened to it, and it was a guy asking Joe Rogan, hey, you used to totally be into this UFO stuff and Bigfoot, and now you've just kind of, flipped the script, and it's like you just think it's all, bogus. What happened to you? He says, you know what, I was really into all of it, and I'm not saying there is another life in the universe and all. He goes, but I did this show on, I forget what his show was, but he did his little show where it was like an investigative series that he did.
Like Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan Faces the World or something like that.
Thank you. Yeah. And so he talked about that, and he said, and in all those investigations and doing that show, I discovered, you know what, it's a business. It's about money. A lot of these people are just out there doing it for the money and to get interest, people's interest, because life's boring without this stuff. It's all about the money. Follow the dollars. Now, I think in a sense that may be true. A lot of people are in the UFO topics to make money, but there's a lot of serious researchers out there like Richard. But then when I started taking that vein of thinking, I followed it to TTSA. Well, who props up TTSA as far as, this recent thing with Greenwald? I watched those clips on all the major news channels, and when they referenced those videos, they kept referencing TTSA. I never heard John Greenwald's name mentioned. So they're giving the credibility and the credit to, and you talked about this the other night, to TTSA. Mm-hmm. And so they're propping them up so that the public will look at them as a credible resource from, the Pentagon or the government. They want you to make that connection in your mind so that the more they're propped up, maybe over time more people will invest, follow the dollars. These are the credible people to trust. These are the people to watch. Forget about the UFO community. And in the same sense, Tom DeLonge used your platform and Coast to Coast and all these other platforms to launch his company, but now that they're launched and they're putting all this stuff out there, which a lot of it they won't even answer questions to, the important questions, oh, Jimmy, we've got this, the whole bit. It's like, what respect is he giving back to us? So why should we give him respect and trust them when they can't even come back on the show and answer some important questions and clean up their mess, basically. And so those are just my basic thoughts and feelings.
I agree with everything. At this point, I don't care about having, Tom back on the show. I think everything that they have done, they've answered the questions by not answering the questions. That's number one. Number two, I did speak to Tom a couple of months ago, had a conversation. It was maybe 15 minutes long on the phone, and he said, yeah, man, I'll come on Fade to Black. It'd be great, but I'm only going to talk about unidentified, and I'm only going to promote the show. I'm not going to talk about anything that the community is concerned about. And I was like, well, I guess you're not coming on Fade to Black then. So there's that part. And addressing, I've got 15 seconds, then I got to fly. Joe Rogan, who walked away from this UFO thing, he's certainly right back in it now. He just did the Lazar interview. He just had on Dan Aykroyd. He's been talking UFOs a lot lately because he enjoys those clicks, and he knows it apparently is pretty good business for him, too. with that, Deb, enjoy the rest of your night, and we'll see you tomorrow night on Fader Night.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Take care.
Thank you. Great call from Deb, and thank you, Scott, for that. I've got to get out of here. We went wall to wall tonight, and tomorrow night is Fader Night. Open lines all night long. Fade to Black's executive producer is Rita Camarion. Show is produced by Hilton J. Palm, Renee, Dennis, and Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vitola, Mark D. Kovar. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. SpaceboyMusic.com. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network, and syndication is KGRA The Planet. This broadcast only copyrighted 2019 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Thank you, Richard Bleepin' Dolan. Great conversation tonight. I'll see everybody tomorrow. Until then, be safe. Go Beckley Tepe.